In November of last year, Manchester United's owners, the Glazer family, announced they were considering selling the club as part of exploring strategic alternatives. Given the group's almost unanimous unpopularity with the club's fan base, the news was greeted, let's say, warmly. However, while nobody expected a speedy conclusion to the sale of one of football's biggest and therefore most expensive clubs, almost 9 months on from that, the Glazers remain in charge. Despite plenty of claims and counterclaims, no deal has been agreed, and Manchester United enter the new season under an enormous cloud of uncertainty. This is why the Manchester United takeover still hasn't happened. Not to spoil the end of this video for you, but if you've seen Succession, then, well, you're halfway there.
All you have to do is vote yes and support the deal.
With each passing week comes another claim that a breakthrough is on the horizon for this deal, and with each passing week, fans are left frustrated at the lack of anything of the sort. Anyway, right now on the table are two competing bids. The first is led by this man, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Born in Failsworth, Greater Manchester, Ratcliffe is a British billionaire, engineer and chairman of chemical giants Ineos, reported to be the second richest man in the UK. His net worth, at last estimate, is of almost 30 billion. As a person, he's a figure that appeals strongly to the majority of Manchester United fans, but his bid includes an option for two of the Glazers to remain at Old Trafford. Avram and Joel Glazer could then be poised to stay on as minority stakeholders if this bid is accepted, which would see them continue to invest in the club without the power to make key decisions. Not a concept that's proving universally popular, but possibly a necessity given the way the deal is being financed. On the other side of this issue is Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, who has been leading a Qatari consortium throughout the entire takeover process and wants to purchase a 100% stake in Manchester United and all its assets. Entirely funded by the Sheikh's 9-2 Foundation, this sale would allegedly leave the club debt-free and allow them to look to invest in the football teams, the training centre, the stadium and the wider infrastructure, the fan experience and the communities the club supports. This would bring a complete end to the near 20 years of Glazer ownership dating back to their own takeover in 2005. And it would also allegedly wipe the club's debts, estimated to be around the £490 million mark. The idea here that Manchester United would cease to be a work in progress almost overnight and could then immediately start competing again with the biggest teams in Europe. Fans, understandably, are divided. For some, after years of deriding rivals Man City over their state-sponsored ownership model, the idea of becoming the plaything of an oil state themselves leaves a bitter taste. However, at the same time, there's a reality over what it now takes to compete at the very top level, and if that's the only way they can fully remove the Glazers, then so be it. And while Ratcliffe might personally represent a far more palatable owner, there are question marks over how his deal would be financed and what spending power it would actually give the club. That, combined with the idea of the Glazers remaining involved in some capacity, makes it a complete non-starter for sections of the support. Full sale only banners spotted towards the end of last season. And that's all without even getting into the accusations that there's involvement in the Qatari bid from PSG owners, or that it might contain a level of state involvement that would ultimately see the Premier League forced to reject it. But this whole issue of the preferred bidder, be that between the fans or the board, is only able to rumble on though because of a lack of any substantial development. So, what's the hold-up? Well, and this won't surprise Manchester United fans, the problem is the Glazers. The breakdown of their ownership means that while Avram and Joel work as co-chairmen and oversee the majority of the club's business, Kevin Glazer, Darcy Glazer, Edward Glazer and Brian Glazer all retain between 10 and 20% of the voting power, and ultimately a consensus is needed between them for any decision on this to be reached. Reports behind the scenes have always indicated that Joel, who retains the largest stake at nearly 20%, is determined to remain in charge with a new financial backer. Avram, his brother, is willing to stay on in a similar capacity, but is also open to the idea of a full sale. Between them though, they lack the ability to buy out their other four siblings and simply make the decision themselves, and all of those are believed to only want to sell their remaining shares if it enables them to get out completely. Not to oversimplify this, but if you've ever tried to resolve a major issue between 6 blood relatives and siblings at that, it's a wonder it's likely to be resolved at all. It's worth also keeping in mind that all 6 of these people are billionaire businessmen and women, because they were born into being billionaire businessmen and women, and not necessarily because any of them are any good at being billionaire businessmen and women.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
Even the wording of the proposed sale back in November was designed to leave room for interpretation. Exploring strategic alternatives certainly invites bids for the club, but it doesn't necessarily commit you to actually selling it.
There is a lack of clarity, and maybe you got certain impressions.
Sure you're not having that seizure?
They had hoped, it's reported, that they'd currently be considering a wealth of credible offers and thus able to negotiate a number of bidders into buying only the shares from certain family members, leaving others to remain in place. In a competitive field, there was confidence that someone would bite at that offer, but with just the Ratcliffe and Qatari options available, neither side is willing to acquiesce to this. Thus, the last few months have seen multiple rounds of bidding between the two groups to try and extract the highest possible price point for the club. That's currently estimated to be approaching the £5 billion mark, and over the last few weeks, both groups have believed, and indeed briefed the press, that they were edging ahead of the other. But likewise, for all the presumptive, unverified and ultimately denied reports that a deal with one party or the other is imminent, there's been an equal amount of column inches dedicated to the question, do the Glazers even want to sell? The Times even going so far as to report that both bidders fully expected neither side to have an offer accepted and were both prepared to walk away were certain deadlines not met.
If we ask for more money, Matson walks. I know that.
No, you don't know that.
So, if you've read that the Glazers want to sell Man United, then yeah, that's true. They do. But if you've also read that the Glazers actually don't want to sell Man United, then yeah, that's true as well. It's just that the Glazers as a concept represents the competing interests of 6 conflicting individuals, all of which are changing with every passing week. The bottom line here then, and it's one that becomes increasingly ridiculous as we edge closer and closer to both a Premier League and Champions League campaign that Manchester United are currently grossly underprepared for, is that there still hasn't been a resolution to this sale because, as a group, the Glazers can't decide how they want to resolve it.